It's 6 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Take roll call.
Kirby?
Here.
Gray?
Here.
Nail?
Here.
Nate?
Here.
Walker?
Here.
West?
Here.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
John, please.
Heavenly Father, we ask that you put a hedge of protection around the men and women of PCAD, alert the ambulance drivers to the dangers of the road, and give the medical personnel the wisdom that they need to treat the citizens in need. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Everyone's had a chance to review the previous minutes. There are no additions or corrections. They'll stand improvements presented. Now, the visitors, we have Karen with us this evening. There's no public comments, so we'll move on to the officer's report, financial report.
All right, it starts on page 4, actually technically 6. The numbers kind of jumbled in with the other numbers. The first one is the balance sheet, current year to prior year, as far as assets and liabilities. Last year at the end of January versus this year at the end of January. And I've been doing really good today until just now. My cough is kicked up, so. Yeah, remember that meeting we were at? I said, nobody get me sick. Didn't work. Any questions on the balance sheet? Okay, page 8 is the profit and loss year-to-date comparison. Same thing, comparing revenues and expenses this year to last year. You can see the variance there. So you can see there's a big change in payroll increase, and sales tax revenues were down in January. Another big change, insurance. We pay that all at the beginning of the year, so that all shows up in January. And then professional fees. Any questions on any of that? 10 is the budget year to date. So first column is just January. Second column is the budget for January. So for January, revenue was up 5% over budget, and expenses were up 20% over budget. I think a lot of that is just timing with capital expenses. We have it spread out over the year, and there was quite a bit kind of front loaded there in January. Also, there was no second meeting in December, so some of those expenses got pushed into January, which kind of makes it look a little worse. Any questions on any of that?
I noticed that the employee costs were 22.25% over budget. Is that right?
So there was 3 payrolls in January. So
Okay, that explains it.
yeah, there's 2 months that we have 3 payrolls, so that January was the first month of that. So any other questions on that? Okay, page 11 through 14 is the budget versus actual details. And this is January versus the entire budget. So 1/12 of the year would be 8%. So operating revenue was 8.29%, so pretty much right on target. Again, like total ambulance operations was over budget, but I think most of that is sitting in medical supplies. And I think some of that was just the timing of pushing stuff from December to January. So, let's see, what else did I have? Vacations was at 8%. Yeah, and the payroll expenses, again, yeah, we had 3 payrolls, so it was up at 11% versus 8% is where it should be. Overall, total expenses were 10% of the budget, so up just slightly, but again, if you take into consideration paying insurance upfront and the capital, as well as the third payroll, that kind of explains that extra 2%. Any other questions on anything?
When we deferred payments from December to January, is that something we'll do this year for next year, or are we gonna?
We
get
have pretty
caught?
much done that every year. Usually that last meeting falls right there
Right,
around
because then we have
Christmas.
to adjust do the budget amendments and everything, and we don't take those December payments.
Well,
into
it's gonna
account.
even out by the end of the year. It's just a timing difference.
Yeah.
Basically. So
So
I think it'll
there's
even out.
not gonna be a year when we pay all those things in December and we have
I doubt it.
okay.
I mean,
As long as we're consistent from year to year, we can
yeah,
compare.
it's been pretty
apples with
consistent. I mean, the second Tuesday in December usually falls around Christmas, so, or fourth Tuesday, I'm sorry. Second board meeting, which is the 4th.
apples.
Any other questions? Page 15, that's just showing the capital purchases for the year. Communication equipment, 2 Power Pro cots, and then furniture. Page 16 is that comparison chart over the last 5 years of revenue and expenses. Page 17 is sales tax for the month for January and February. Actually, we got February's already. So February was up 22,000 over last year. January was down 25,000. So in total, we're down 3,000 over last year. Page 18 is just the bank balances compared to last board meeting and then year over year. For January, it's down 420,000. And year over year, it's up almost $500,000. 19 through 22 is the check register. You guys have had this for a while. Anybody have any questions on anything? You guys want to go through that? Anybody have any questions? Okay. Pages 23 is the total bills due, and then the details are pages 24 and 25. Any questions on any of those?
Page 24.
24, okay.
I see Main Street logo written under total for GFI Digital, and then I see total for Main Street logo Optum Care. So
that you're just combining lines. So GFI, and then there's total GFI, Main Street logo, total Main Street logo.
So all of that is for Main Street logo then?
$275 is Main Street logo. GFI is $91.28.
Okay, that 9128 was something that was necessary to go to Main Street logo then, is that?
So 91.28 is for GFI. Main Street logo is $275.
So why does it say Main Street logo right under total for GFI Digital?
It's the next vendor. It's just the next vendor.
Okay, these
Yeah,
go
just in
this
case
way.
there's multiple.
Yes.
I'm with you.
Of the same person, so it goes break right there, total. Then
Yeah.
it starts there and then break right there.
All right, I'm with you.
Yeah, if there was multiple payments for one vendor, they would.
Yeah,
be
so
under the
some of
same
them, like
one.
if you look at American Response Vehicles, invoices.
And the only other question I had was that Microsoft Surface laptop, was that a replacement or is that an additional unit we bought? Replacement, thank you.
There's no other questions, that's the end of my report.
Are there any other questions? Not, I'll take a motion for approve payment of outstanding bills.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
All right.
Unfinished business, special events.
All right, in the handout that I gave you guys, it has the colors on it. I went through all the events for 2024, put down the scheduled hours that the crews have been scheduled for. And then below that, you have estimated totals. And so the estimated totals are not reflective of what actual payroll was for those. I basically took the top tier of the highest paid, or the top of the, where we pay somebody, and figured that into if it was 2 people that made the most money they could, what that would be. And that's where I got my numbers from, by totaling up the hours of what the cost was. So for your unpaid events, total payroll was $22,333.05. But that's not what we spent. I mean, that's
Right,
what it could be.
that's a value
Yeah.
of that donation.
Right.
I think the unpaid hours there added up to somewhere around 110 or something like that. But,
Roughly, yeah.
and I was thinking maybe if we wanted to set policy, we could determine a number of hours per year that we're willing to kind of index at. And then when somebody says, would you come? And we say, well, we'd allocated 125 hours and we're there.
I like that idea. Ours is easier than.
Yeah, that's
payroll.
easier than
Yeah.
dollars or whatever.
Right.
We just say
Yeah.
for hours.
I like that.
You know, my only recommendation would be, I mean, because it waxes and wanes with the high schools and the football games. So, and I don't know how you would, I guess we could just peel them out and say, you know, these hours here, we're not gonna consider the high schools. I mean, we have to cover them. And I don't know that they're gonna.
That's still the service we provide. They didn't pay, it doesn't cost us that much extra, but if we're relating to the community, we actually had remote service of 125 hours last year for community activities. That sounds positive to me.
I mean, it can be something to look at, you know, like if I mean, I don't know when Wyoming will ever have their show again, and if they even call us to ask us. So, you know, we could look at that when they called and said, well, you know, we've already allocated quite a bit of hours, you know.
We've done 65 hours so far this year and we'd give you 5 more.
Right.
But then if we can, when we do any type of publicity or whatever, I think setting that information out that we've done that much site work is probably a good thing.
The one thing I'll point out to you, the one shaded in green, they're single staff member in a vehicle type of events. So like the horse shows, they just request a single EMT with a bag and some equipment. They don't want a full ambulance out there. So those are paid less, and of course we pay less because we're only paying for one. And then like the Mozart Music Festival, that nobody ever actually requested us to go to that. We did it because I felt like, from what we were being told, it was going to be our responsibility to cover it, and I'd rather be prepared than not. So, so truly, I mean, the one that sticks out there is the Whiteman request to come to Whiteman. You know, that was basically 24 hours, give or take. So, but I mean, it's good. I mean, it's something we can watch moving forward. It's just, you know, And some of these things I wasn't 100% sure about, but I know like the football games can change year over year, you know. So that's the only one that could change. Your bull rides, rodeos, and stuff like that is pretty set in stone. You can count it.
Just keeping this information year to year is a good gauge of. Yeah. Thank you for doing that.
And no problem.
Is there a, those that are doing things for the public, it's not a fundraiser, I can see us charging, you know, for fundraisers like the Lions Club pub crawl.
Mhm.
And that's a big fundraiser for the Lions Club. But then the football games, you know, that's a lot of civilians out there, those kids aren't getting paid to play at all. So it seems like we would lean more toward not charging those that are community service, so to speak.
Yeah, and we don't. I mean, you know,
Does that come in?
the rule of thumb has always been like, you know, you're the events you have to pay to get into. So if you're charging at the door, minus the one is the Dream Factory tractor pull that we do. We don't charge for the tractor pull.
So that is a consideration.
You know, and it's just, it's what I hate saying this. It's we've always done it that way. So I mean, I don't like that term, but that is, and it's kind of an expectation anymore. I mean, you know, I know they charge the door, but they also, you know, that the Dream Factory tractor pull is not it's to make money for. It's kind of like a Lions Club would be, you know.
And
Well,
the only
goes
two,
right back to the community.
Right.
the only two we actually charged for was the rodeo, which was for profit, and then the bikes competition was a requirement for insurance. Yes.
Yeah, and you know, generally we wouldn't charge them, but they were insistent that they pay. They said we have $1,000 budgeted, and I was like, okay. And honestly, that should be highlighted in green as well, because that's not a full ambulance. I just missed that when I was doing the highlighting.
Well, I think this is a wonderful thing that we have care close by for those folks.
Any other discussion on the special events? Now we'll move on to the employee handbook policy updates.
Page 26. This is just updating the policy book to match the IRS standards for travel and reimbursement expenses.
I did my due diligence on that, and I would point out that the IRS standards are caps. And that currently the $50 that we have is the same as what Gardner Denver allows their people. And the school district is at 59. And we're talking about going to 63, which is the IRS standards for this zip code, right? An interesting remark that came from Gardner Denver guy I talked to, when I said, you're 50 and that's what we are. School district is 59. And he said, yeah, but they're spending other people's money. And I thought, well, that's a pretty interesting attitude about that. Gardner Denver is a for-profit enterprise, I'm sure, but we like to watch our bottom line as well. But that IRS standard is not a requirement. That is a allowed.
Right.
Okay.
Which is what the 50 is too.
And then the next one is additional pay for exempt employees, and that's just adding the 3% increase to those to make it match what we've already done. And then I handed you guys a handout. I know we talked about it at the meeting when this was approved. The questions about the calendar year and everything else. So I went back and I looked at it and then gave it a lot more thought. Had some conversations with the battalion chiefs and the captains to see kind of where they fell with it and what they thought. And we pretty much agreed that maybe 6 was a little harsh, where somebody could find themselves in trouble in a year's time. I mean, it's leading it. We thought 8 would be better. And instead of trying to do a look back and then have a gotcha moment for the staff, I think that calendar year, January 1st to December 31st. And so like, if you call in sick today, we're gonna look back at the 1st of January and then basically start keeping count from there. So I made those changes in there for you guys to look at and approve, since I didn't have it and get some changes to it.
And you're comfortable with the enforcement of these? Let's.
I think we accept changes.
Second.
Oh, you guys always. Man, what about Eric's discussion?
Is there any further discussion?
Yes,
The
there is.
discussion is supposed to be after the motion anyway.
Robert's Rule of Order.
Well, he was discussing all the changes.
He was presenting the change.
Okay. Do we need to, are we just going to approve the changes, or do we need to go through this and, like, if I make grammatical changes, can I just do that after the fact if they're just grammatical in nature?
It'll won't change
The intent, okay, because like it says the district's policy, but no, and then there's, I found like 10 of them, so. But I don't want to have to go over them, but they're just grammatical, not anything to do with content.
We don't want to get hooked on black letter law.
All right, you may continue.
No, I think you should offer those, corrections. If we could adjust the motion to include grammatical changes, can we? Friendly amendment or whatever they call it.
Forgot? I don't know.
Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. New business, the Station 3 driveway.
Well, you need to speak to that?
Yeah, you can, start, yeah, go ahead.
I'll start. So I brought back up, this is Darren back here, but, we had our last meeting, last Thursday that we meet with Navigate every Thursday. And, an issue got brought up of, sharing a driveway onto 16th Street. So originally, the permission was granted by DOT, by somebody that probably shouldn't have had the authority to make the decision maybe, or something, but it kind of got brought up to the higher ups, and now they denied the second entrance closer to the west of us, closer to the roundabout that serves the other property from EW Thompson. So now we're talking about putting in a shared entrance. And we had some, Darren, you know, he was there at the meeting, and so Diane is aware of that shared entrance, and kind of what we wanted from you guys is maybe first explain it to you guys and see kind of what your thoughts was about, you know, sharing that entrance, and also maybe some compensation for having to divide the cost of the entrance, maybe maintenance costs, or anything that comes up during that project and for the future of that driveway. So that's kind of where we at with that.
So we're gonna share the cost with a tenant to be announced.
Yes.
Outside of that, you don't have any control through that tenant. Yeah, which is maybe a Starbucks and there's a lot of cars. So we can turn that.
I mean, that's something we talked about. You know, if it's a Chick-fil-A, we're gonna be in some trouble, right?
I would think that we would want to put in an extra wide drive, even if it's just for us, given the nature of the vehicles that we, what was the original?
Yeah.
30 foot?
We're showing a 48-foot wide.
Okay, that's what I was
Yeah,
hoping we
so-
weren't going with a 30 foot.
Yeah, so originally we had a 30 feet, showed, and then we discussed it early on and said, no, we can kick it up, and MoDOT is good with that. They start to get nervous if you exceed 50 feet, and 60 feet is the ultimate, width.
So if we go to 48, that's for the shared one.
48 is just the way that we have it right now by ourselves.
Good.
And I think that 48 is sized correctly to serve both properties. So to kind of put a scale of this, we've got 2.07 acres and EW has 1.62 acres. But it's fair to say that, you know, we have a 6,000 square foot building, proposed building. They could put a 10,000 square foot, you know, proposed building, if you will. There could be 50 parking spaces. That'd be kind of what you would see. This is just a scenario I'm giving you. But Casey's down the street to the east, that's on 0.4 acres, 0.4. So Casey's would go in here easy. You know, either way, with a 48-foot wide drive, I don't think there's gonna be an issue as long as you offset, you know, about 50 feet, where things don't get too jammed up and to handle that traffic flow through there. You know, I understand the main focus is your traffic, ambulance traffic will be exiting south. We've entertained some scenarios and design discussions about, you know, whether we need both Winchester access and the Y highway access. Either way, this can be shared and it can be designed as such. If you have an attorney that can draft up an agreement and work with me, I can get maybe he can feel comfortable doing the legal description because he'd be tying it off of what Kerry had already surveyed, Kerry Turpin, and he might be able to actually draft that and provide that description himself. If the attorney needs a surveyor, I can grab one, but it will not be Kerry, who's retired. So as the landowner, you guys probably want to, you know, handle this, get an attorney, and you might, you know, spend a couple $1,000 packaging this legal description for the ingress egress easement for your property. The takeaway is I kind of feel like there's going to be two options here that I would look at as far as EW. The first option is if we only have access off of Y Highway, we do not do that, you know, drive to Winchester. We come up with a shared cost. But if you want the Winchester access, which I think would be great, that has value to them. And I was going back through the real estate contract, and it doesn't really specify anything other than that would be shared maintenance of any access, because that's a part of an ingress egress, the access to Winchester. But you're setting them up basically on both properties, on that north property and on the 1.62 acres.
Mm-hmm.
So you paid money for it. It's 0.16 acres. I was looking at the real estate contract, and this is before the actual survey, like true survey, was done. This is from January, the contract, and the survey was done in April of last year. And you could have not bought the flag stem potentially and just got the easement, but then they would have given you for that, you know, charged you for that. That's just part of business. This is all fine. But there's value to doing that, and that can be part of that, you know, cost calculation. So kind of depends on which way you go. I can again work with an attorney to do that, and I do represent W also. So I'm walking the line here to come with a, you know, fair agreement here.
What's the curb cut on just Winchester?
Well,
30 footer there.
yeah, so that's correct. So it'll actually only be 25 feet wide, but that'll be 2 lane. That's pretty typical for, it's like a, you know, typical serving drive. So we only have 30 feet to work with, and we'll put in the 25-foot wide drive.
Our use for that was to have pretty much one-way ambulance flow, come in on Winchester, out on
That was the idea, yeah.
16th Street. And if an adjoining property is there, they're gonna wanna have ingress and egress both.
And they've already got it. So it's a balance of things, like really it's just about access. Like, what do you guys see yourself driving and circulation stuff that you wanna see? Want that Winchester access, I would propose asking for some shared costs of that as well. Because again, it's gonna serve 2 of their properties. It is what it is. And it doesn't hurt to ask, and you can come up with some reasonable numbers.
So the property to the east necessarily have to have ingress and egress from Winchester?
I mean, really, it's just this,
Yeah, it's
the property
not,
goes
it
west of
doesn't,
the
it
PCAD
doesn't
and
go
all the fun,
through
it
to
doesn't
the,
go through the east.
to the
Yeah.
north.
No. So that's what it'll be, serving essentially PCAD and the north and south side of that drive of EW's property, so. And there's no guarantees because it's, again, a tenant who we don't know who that is, and- Well, and I think Chick-fil-A, they're gonna be looking at Broadway or their South 65, but I do think like at Casey's, or there will be some, 1.62 acres, you could see some serious traffic generated by something like a, gas station or what have you. But again, with a 48-foot wide drive, I don't think there's any issue if it's laid out correctly. It's essentially this, kind of another version of a public street, if you will, where it's a shared drive. So we want to make sure if the ambulances, if you did not do the Winchester access, the one thing to consider is the configuration. If an ambulance is coming in and they're going to try to loop around the west side of the PCAD building, you want to make that a clean, turn, a couple turns really, and make sure that that's all in line and really what this shared drive needs to be in the positioning that shouldn't be an issue. But yeah, I guess you pay $200,000 for the property, $100,000 an acre. Like I said, you basically bought that Flagstone portion, which is 0.16 acres, so you paid $16,000 for it, if you will. You probably paid $10,000 for an easement. You're trying to, this 1.62 acres, if they need access, they will not have their own access. It will both be Winchester and Y will be via off a shared, egress off someone else's property. So it really hinges on access, and that how do you put a dollar on that necessarily? But if you look at it just for like 50-50 the drive portion, I think we came up with a number. I think we were looking at about $12,000 for that really ballpark. What 50% of it would be. Again, I can get better numbers, but you might be looking at a range from $12,000 to $30,000 or something here for what I think the value is there for.
Permitting for the curb cut on 16th Street is a state issue.
Yep.
Curb cutting on Winchester is a city issue. Yep. How much difference or how much spacing between curb cuts does the city require?
They have a minimum width, and they have a maximum width of 35 feet.
Between them?
Well, from curb to curb, so like the width of.
Between this.
Oh, you mean
access and this access?
Oh, well, yeah, so.
I know it has to be like 35 feet
Yeah.
from a corner and whatever.
Yeah, it's actually 30 feet from a corner, from a corner.
But from each other, they can be.
Yeah, they could be 30 feet, like from, between the two, adjacent, curbs, if you will, not center to center of drive, but that would have to be 30 feet apart.
So if we had our own entrance off of Winchester and then would force whoever buys the property to the north to create their own curb cut, they couldn't be right on their property line, then they would have to space further north.
There's already a description for an ingress, shared ingress, egress.
So
they've already got it.
All right, they thought ahead on that.
Yeah, so, it's just kind of an access question, is probably the bigger driver, and then as far as and again, this may work out to where MoDOT, they're working on it. I checked in with Diane Simon this afternoon, and they're still working on it. Haven't heard any updates. So it's 50-50 chance, but she's preparing for the worst, that they're gonna say no, even though they said in writing 2 or 3 times, confirming that they would actually have permission to do it. So, it's kind of a long story, but basically the potholing that was done when they got ready to actually build the entrance, it basically raised a flag because there was an electric line going to MoDOT's lighting that's around the roundabout. A call got put into Kansas City, and this is all, the excavator, had no intentions of doing this, but he set off something that basically raised a flag to other people. And that's, suddenly they were like, well, I don't know that you can do that. And that's the story basically. So they're still trying to work through it. But worst case scenario, they say no. That's what we're talking about here. They confirmed 2 or 3 times that it was gonna be, permissible.
So what are the chances of that excavator doing it twice? Wouldn't he be more careful the second time?
Well, so the line is only from that our corner, our southwest corner. There's a pole there, and the line, it's a rising pole that feeds underground electric that goes straight west. So it will not cross our frontage. Now, we do have several other utilities, but it's manageable. But that one happened to be relatively shallow, and it was going to be an issue, and it needed to be lower, deeper, basically.
So to the east, it wouldn't be.
It would not be an issue.
And isn't that where the other curb cut would go?
Yes.
Farther east?
Yeah.
Well, then
That's
that
where
shouldn't
our-
be an issue,
Yeah.
wouldn't think.
So, anyway, again, just a heads up. I think it might be a few more weeks. Gosh, it's taking forever to get answers out of these guys, out of MoDOT. But it kind of does come into play to our planning and what we're going to do. We have a schedule where we're going out to bid in late May, and this all kind of factors in.
We're not gonna go out to bid until late May.
Yep, late May, like May 21st, I think.
So I thought the design specs were ready to be let out probably April 1st, or April.
They'll be submitted, but they're not gonna be let out to bid until May 21st.
So they won't start breaking ground until July, or?
That's a probably pretty safe assumption.
Yeah, we're not getting that. Then it's a 6-month build after that, right?
Yeah, well, it's not a bad thing, to be honest. Like, at least from here till May, if you don't have to do construction, that's a good thing. Just the ground's a mess and everything's a mess with it, but yeah.
So where did we lose our time when we went with, you guys have been meeting with them? I mean, how'd we get behind schedule that fast with Navigator?
I don't think we are.
Yeah,
I don't think
they
we are.
said, I think May was always the kind of thing, they said they could maybe move it
I
up.
was under the impression April, we're back in April.
No, I think May was the time they said we may be, depending on how it goes, maybe be able to go out a little earlier. But I think we're not expected to be in the building till 26 next year.
Okay.
So,
I thought that schedule was a little farther ahead, and we were gonna get in to just finish it.
No, I mean,
building in December.
so far, we're on track. In fact, I think probably.
we're a little early, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's not on my timeline. I want to move in tomorrow, but it's not the way it works.
We are gonna be going out on Winchester, aren't we?
Well, the ambulance is exit onto 16th Street. Right now, there's conversations about, when we're looking at costs and trying to keep it where it's manageable, where we may do away with the Winchester Drive, just to keep the.
Just to give you an idea of cost, so it's about 250 feet, that Flagstone portion. And, it's an estimate, but if you did concrete, that could cost, with curb and gutter and concrete and the entrance to curb cut to Winchester, that could be, $60,000. It might be 40 if you did asphalt or something. I mean, so that kind of at least gives you some estimate to think about. I don't know where all this needs to go, but again, you might have 2 options to pitch to EW. Kind of, if you need both those accesses, or you're doing both, or just the one on highway.
So if they're going over to all those retirement homes and stuff where we get quite a few calls, they're gonna go out on 16th.
To the roundabout.
The roundabout.
Yeah, that way you can go, when you come out, you go left or right, and that way you
The
can.
sirens going and people, I mean, that just seems safer to go out on the 16th. They would see you coming and stop on 16th, or I mean, on Winchester. But
The problem is you're not gonna be, you won't know what call you're gonna have, so you would have to point the vehicles one way or another. So you would have come in 16th and then go all the way out of Winchester. Or, come in Winchester and always go out on 16th. You wouldn't have to, because you don't know who's up for call, where the call is. So I think the better egress will be onto 16th Street.
okay.
We got everything geared up to go one direction, come in and two right turns onto that is easier than going around the building.
It'd be perfect.
And that's the preference, that's what we want. I mean, but like I said, we're studying the costs and we'll have more information, this week, but we're looking at things where we can help control that. And that was just one of the things that we looked at to try to bring it down. So we'll know more when we meet Thursday, but I mean, that's just one of the conversations we've had was.
See, any other questions on driveway?
Never mind. Sit on it.
So how, do you guys want us to check into an attorney or how do you guys, what is you guys' preference on dealing with this access? Do you guys have a number in mind or do you guys wanna maybe think about it and bring it up on the next meeting and kind of figure out what we wanna do about that?
Shouldn't we wait for MoDOT to make their minds up?
We can do that too.
I mean, we can, I really like you guys just to have me be in the know. I mean,
Yeah.
I think right now, I mean, if that's the route we need to go, then as long as you guys are for it, I mean, we can always bring it back up for a vote later on, and I can reach out to our attorney and kind of see what that would look like, as far as the contract would go, maybe want to wait. But like Theron said, it's also impacting, how we set up our design too.
Right.
And how we plan to that ingress and egress to happen. And we can revisit it again next meeting as well. Because I plan on reporting out on the building processing or our progress anyway. So
How often are you meeting with Navigate?
every other week.
Every other week, Thursdays? Should Nick be there?
If you want to come anytime.
Would it help to have a board member at those meetings or would make no difference? Even if they would just sat there and was quiet, which would be hard for me, but.
I mean, I don't know that it would help or hurt. I mean, more than welcome. I mean, basically, as it sits right now, we went through and we've got our plans. We're in the design and development, and then we're looking at cost. And so that's why the discussion about, what do we do to make this work for us? And that's basically what we're working through right now is how do we make it work for us? And we gave ideas the last meeting as far as what we can do to make that things that we could cut, change to make it more manageable. But we don't have numbers yet to know if what we did was good enough or not good enough. I mean, and like I said, I plan on having a pretty detailed, at least a little ways detailed report as much as I can at the next meeting. But if you're interested in coming, then sure. It's I find the stuff interesting. Others might too, but truly at this point it's just figuring out what can we do, what can we afford, and what's that gonna look like?
Well, it needs to meet your needs, or there's no sense in doing it.
Correct.
Yeah, I'd rather not have to go back and redo something because we didn't do it right the first time.
Correct.
But you got builder rights to check.
So it's a balancing process, right? Or it's a balancing act right now. And like I said, we talked pretty extensively at our last meeting about what we can do to get things where it's better. And we're just have to wait and see what that looks like, and then talk about it, and we'll come back together again.
After Thursday, you should have a better idea how this will affect us. So maybe we can wait till next meeting to make a decision on this and see how it all fits together.
And if your go-to attorney, doesn't handle this, I've got a couple I could use here, just, be part of my service to provide a description. It's an ingress egress, description. But I definitely recommend one or the other that an attorney handles that. It's not too complicated, but that's the recommendation. If we go that direction, if we need to. And I think we're likely gonna approach this to where we're gonna do our building the way that we wanna do it, and it's gonna accommodate that scenario. And it's really not gonna, I said it is going to impact us, but I think we're gonna position everything and lay out everything to where if it turns out that after we go out to bid, that they come to us and say, hey, we really need that ingress egress, we can accommodate it. This is what I'm trying to say. So that's kind of, I think, the best approach there.
So we'll just table this till the next meeting at least. Any other questions? Not, we'll move on to gov deals.
Unit 13 closed on gov deals on Friday. It did sell for $12,500, and we are in the process of scheduling pickup for that.
Any questions? If not, are there any announcements? Now they'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting. Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.